All right, we're going to get started tonight. We are talking about guns. Our speaker tonight, Ian Escalante, of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. He's the sharpest dressed man in the room and probably the best shooter, if I have to guess. So give it up for Ian.
Well, thank you guys. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I always say I love coming to libertarian gatherings because I can vape in here and no one's going to yell at me. It's very good to be here at Liberty on the Rocks. I honestly have been coming to Liberty on the Rocks for a couple years now. Even before I moved into Colorado, I was previously working with Young Americans for Liberty, and I got in touch with Brandon, and I got a chance to go to some really great gatherings up in northern Colorado, Fort Collins, Greeley. So it's good to be down here in Denver. Wow, do we have a lot to talk about guns. How many of you were at the assault weapons ban hearing yesterday or testified online? Awesome. I'm very, very glad to see that we have so many people that have been able to get involved here. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm going to warn you, may depress you, may piss you off, but there are things that need to be said, and we need to really understand the gravity of the situation that we are in here in the state of Colorado when it comes to firearms. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do about 20 minutes where I'm going to talk about last session, our lawsuits, our current session right now, 20 to 30. I tend to run long. How much time do I have?
Hour total.
Hour total. And then I'm just going to turn the rest over to you guys and let you guys ask questions because I'm sure there are a boatload of questions that you guys have about what's going on right now. So first off, my name is Ian Escalante, Director of Operations for Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. I am our head lobbyist, so I'm the one who's down in the swamp 25-8, unfortunately. And I also run our super PAC. So I am in charge of kicking these bastards out of office. Alicio, speaking from a strictly Ian Escalante perspective, probably will be something from RMGO PAC soon, but I fully endorse Alicio for Arapahoe County Commission. He is 100% pro-gun. He filled our survey out perfectly, and he is running against Rhonda Fields, who has been one of the most anti-gun senators we have seen in the state's history. Going all the way back to 2013, she was one of the authors and brainchildren behind the 2013 magazine ban, along with the background check legislation. She has had her name on as many of these anti-gun bills as she possibly can. She's awful, she's degenerate, and she needs to leave politics, honestly, forever. That would be my personal druthers right there. So let's talk about last session. So last session was the biggest assault on the Second Amendment we had seen in Colorado history until January 1st, 2024. That changed. But last year we saw about 7 bills that came across. 2 of them we were able to kill. 5 of them, unfortunately, the Dems just, they have the votes. They have a huge majority in both chambers, especially the House. They were really putting the screws to us in the House. So it was a little bit difficult. We are suing over some of those, which I will get to later. The first bill they did last year was an expansion of red flag gun confiscation. So rewind back to 2018, the Parkland shooting happens. Talk about yelling at conservatives. It was 3 Republicans that wrote the initial red flag bill that they tried to ram through in 2018. Fortunately, there were enough good Republicans in the Senate, they were able to kill it. And those 3 Republicans were former State Rep Cole Wist, former District Attorney George Brockler, who is now running for District Attorney again. He and I really don't like each other. We've gotten into. He once told me to put down my AR-15 shaped bomb on Twitter. So when he loses, what am I going to do? I'm going to find an AR-15 shaped bomb and I'm going to mail it to his house.
I got a buddy who blows glass.
Beautiful. Let's talk. I'll give you my card. So, and also the former Douglas County Sheriff, Tony Spurlock, all 3 of them were the brainchildren behind the red flag bill that was failed in 2018. But what happened in 2018, the Dems took the Senate, and we are now in the living hell that is Jared Polis' Colorado. The great libertarian governor, right? No, I don't think so. So they passed red flag gun confiscation, and the original bill that they passed was that the district attorney, a sheriff, or a member of your family could red flag you. The cops show up at your house in the middle of the night, bust your door down, take all your firearms, ammunition, all of it, without a criminal conviction, no due process whatsoever. Well, last year the Dems said, you know what? That doesn't go far enough. So they expanded red flag gun confiscation, and they made it to where now not only can those original people red flag you, your pastor, a licensed psychologist. So let's say if, God forbid, someone here went ahead and got rushed to the hospital and they were wearing an RMGO hat, their ER nurse, if she's a commie, could red flag them straight up under this bill. And your licensed therapist could do it, your psychologist could do it, and probably the most egregious part of it all is your child's school teacher could red flag you under this new bill. So if little Johnny goes to school and, Mrs. Smith, the Communist Teachers Union hack, says, hey, little Johnny, why don't you go ahead and check to see if your parents, are locking up their guns. And little Johnny says, no, they weren't. The teacher could then red flag them. Absolutely insane, crazy, crazy stuff. So that was the first bill that was passed last year, unfortunately. The second bill that they passed was a quote-unquote, I hate using this term because it's a bogus term, but a ghost gun ban. Pretty much it's a ban on unserialized firearms. So how it works is, let's say I go ahead and I order a PSA lower, comes in the mail, and I then, because I want to build my own AR-15, I then buy an upper for that lower, marry them together, I have a firearm, okay? That lower must be serialized, otherwise it's like a third-degree felony. Now, if let's say I put maybe a couple thousand rounds through my new AR and I kind of want a new upper, and I divorce those two receivers, I must either destroy that initial upper or serialize it. Because the way the bill is written is that any readily convertible receiver must be serialized. So that means I could literally put that in my desk drawer, that upper, never use it, but if, let's say, the cops show up at my house or a red flag order is served, they go through all my crap, they find that unserialized upper, I am now a criminal. We are suing over that bill. I will get to that when we talk about our upcoming our lawsuits. Additionally, if let's say you have an old Remington rifle from like the 50s and 60s that was manufactured without a serial number, you still have to serialize it or you're a criminal. Even if you bought the firearm or inherited the firearm, we're talking about your granddad's hunting rifle, you would still need to serialize that. Absolutely insane. Otherwise, you would be a criminal, you would be a felon, and you would lose your gun rights for the rest of your life. The third bill that they passed was a 72-hour minimum waiting period. Now, my emphasis here is on minimum. It says that at a minimum, the firearm must be held for 72 hours. So, for example, if I go over to Triple J Armory, which they are a great gun store, you should absolutely patronize them with your business. If you're in the Littleton area, if you're in northern Colorado, my recommendation would be USA Liberty Firearms. They are a phenomenal gun shop. I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent here. The really sad thing is there are a lot of gun shops that refuse to get involved in the fight against gun control. They're apathetic. They kind of say, well, we'll just comply and, we'll be okay, and they don't want to get involved. USA Liberty Firearms and Triple J Armory are not those shops. They are 100% committed to the Second Amendment. I fully recommend you patronize them with your business for firearms. So let's say I go over to Triple J Armory and I say, you know what, I want to buy a new Glock 47. And, I fill out my background check, my 4473, we send it to CBI, and CBI decides to go on vacation for a month. I would have to wait a month before I could get that firearm just because CBI decided not to process my background check in a timely fashion. It is a 72-hour minimum waiting period. We are also suing over that. Get to that later. The third bill they passed last year was a lovely bill we'll talk about the assault weapons ban real quick. So last year, there was an attempt to pass an assault weapons ban. It's pretty much a carbon copy of the exact bill that they are trying to ram through this year. And we had 500 people show up last year, 18 hours of testimony. So this year, they actually cut the testimony off at 12 hours. Last year, they didn't, and the hearing ended up going until 4 o'clock in the morning. Last year, we put so much pressure on some of the four more moderate Democrats on that committee that they actually turned against their own party leadership and voted down that assault weapons ban, which was phenomenal. It was fantastic, and I was very, very happy about that. Unfortunately, we'll get to that in a second. We did not have the same luck this year because they changed up the composition of that committee. But a lot of people who are here showed up last year. A lot of people that showed up this year also showed up last year. And we were able to put the screws to that bill and kill it. Thank God. So another bill they tried to ram through last year was a private property shooting ban. What that would mean is it would allow localities like Boulder and Denver to regulate discharges of firearms on your own property. You can own that property, you can be paying taxes on that property, but if the city of Erie or the county of Boulder said no firearm discharge allowed on your property, I don't care if you have 100 acres, you would not be allowed to discharge a firearm on that property. That was another completely insane bill that, thank God, we were able to kill last year. It did pass the House, but we put so much pressure on the politicians that the Dems turned around and just let it die on the calendar in the Senate. Another bill they passed last year was a raising of the purchasing age, or a 21 and under ban. I call it a 21 and under ban because it wasn't just raising the purchasing age from 18 to 20 to buy long guns. It also banned possession of firearms for anyone under 21. So I don't have kids, but let's pretend I do for a second. I say, I want little Ian to go kill his first elk. So I take him out down on the western slope and we go elk hunting, and I hand him my Henry 4570 lever action gun and hand it over to him, and the old game warden comes walking around. This actually happened to someone that I was talking with last week. The old game warden comes by. I get arrested because I transferred, the way the bill is written, I transferred that firearm to someone under the age of 18 or under the age of 21. So literally allowing someone under the age of 21 to simply hold a firearm is considered a transfer under that bill. Thankfully, we are also suing over that one. It's pretty much an identical bill to what they passed in Florida a couple years ago after the Parkland shooting. And really what this is aimed at is it's really coming after our way of life as Coloradans and as people who live in the American West. Out here in the American West, it's always been the pinnacle of the quintessential American way of life. Freedom, individual liberty. The people who came out west came out here to escape the overbearing government of the East Coast, the overbearing government of places like Pennsylvania, New York, Washington, D.C., Virginia. And for a long time, it's been a tradition from a very young age to start hunting young. How many went hunting before they were 16 here? Okay. How many went hunting before they turned 21? Okay. How many went hunting under the age of, let's say 10 or 11? Okay. They're really coming after a way of life here, because what they want to do is they want to keep the development of children. They want to arrest it so that they are not able to become comfortable with firearms. They go to the government school. They get fed all this propaganda about how guns are scary and evil, and also it keeps them from being self-sufficient. So then they have to grow up their entire lives, solely relying on modern conveniences like grocery stores and, the modern way of life, the 21st century postmodern way of life, so that they become dependent on these systems. They become dependent on the modern way of life. If they become dependent on it, should the government take it away or start rationing it off, the next generation will not be able to become self-sufficient and be able to hunt and be able to sustain themselves should this whole system come crashing down. Which, the system works great, right? The system's never going to come crashing down, ever. Yeah, okay, great. There's a nice beach on that property. If you look hard enough, you can see it. So that was the other bill that unfortunately we were not able to kill last year. They did ram that through on us, and it was pretty disappointing. So I want to move on to our lawsuits now. We are currently involved in 5 lawsuits across the state of Colorado. The first one, actually, back in 2013 when they passed the magazine ban. This was pre-Bruin. I'll get to the Bruin decision here in a second. But when they passed the magazine ban, we sued in state court. They threw it out. And post-Bruin, 2022, we decided to take another bite at the apple of it. Now, how many people here are familiar with the Bruin decision that came down in 2022? So in summer of 2022, the Supreme Court made a ruling on a case that had been going on for about 15 years. So if you go back to 1910 or 1911, the state of New York passed a law saying that you could not carry a firearm for personal use in self-defense unless you get permission from the government. You have to get a permit. In order to get that permit, you have to prove to the state that you have some sort of common necessity for that firearm. You literally have to ask permission from the government and prove yourself worthy in order to obtain and carry a firearm in the state of New York. So around the time of Heller, the New York State Rifle Pistol Association sued the state of New York over that law and said it was unconstitutional. Well, you know how the courts are. They take forever and nothing moves quickly in the judicial circuit. So in the summer of 2022, we finally got a ruling. So DC versus Heller enshrined that private firearm ownership is a God-given right protected by the Second Amendment. The Bruin decision enshrined that the ability to carry that firearm for self-defense is a God-given right enshrined and protected by the Second Amendment. Well, what they also did is Justice Clarence Thomas, who's arguably one of the greatest Supreme Court justices in U.S. history, actually wrote the majority opinion where they completely changed up the way gun laws are looked at whenever they are coming under legal scrutiny. So previously, they used a legal doctrine called intermediate scrutiny. That means it was sort of a cost-benefit analysis on whether this law would quote-unquote help the public good. So, for example, let's pretend this side of the room is the Colorado General Assembly, which is probably not a good thing to be right now. And let's say you guys say, you know what, we're gonna do an assault weapons ban because we're communists and we like to take people's guns away. So you pass that assault weapons ban, our great libertarian governor signs it, and then I'm Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and I say, okay, I'm suing. So I sue, take you guys to court, and let's say Matt back there is the judge. Under intermediate scrutiny, Matt would look at the law and he would say, okay, it is absolutely correct that you have a God-given right to keep and bear arms that's protected by the Second Amendment. But, I'm going to use a fake statistic because that's what they all use, fake statistics. 95% of mass shootings are carried out by these so-called assault weapons. So for the common good, this law stands and these weapons are still illegal. The Bruin decision completely destroyed intermediate scrutiny. Now the test that must be met when looking at a gun law is it must fit the plain text of the Second Amendment. So the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Great. The history. What was the intent of the Founding Fathers and the writers of the Second Amendment? Look at the old debates, the dialogues, the reasoning why they wanted private firearm ownership here in the state of Colorado. Or not in the state of Colorado, here nationwide.
And you also look at laws that were on the books at the time.
Exactly. And then we look at tradition. So tradition is, we look at the gun laws that existed anywhere from 1776, from when our country was founded, all the way up until about the 1850s, up until about the antebellum era. They also look at common law. So they look at Old English common law and the type of laws that existed surrounding firearms back then. And if you look back then, the only gun laws that existed were no drunk with a gun, and laws that prohibited the ownership of firearms by enslaved blacks. So people who were not considered free under the U.S. Constitution or under the U.S. law at that time, those are the only gun laws that existed. So it's really funny because in one of our court cases, the state, Jared Polis's attorneys, were literally citing old slave law as justification for their gun laws fitting within the tradition of the Second Amendment, which really goes to show they do not view us as free, autonomous, independent individuals. They view us as slaves. They view us as slaves to the government. So if it doesn't meet those three requirements and it doesn't pass that test, that law is considered unconstitutional. Bruin also changed the burden of proof now. So now if Matt is suing, or if I'm suing the state of Colorado, okay, the burden of proof under intermediate scrutiny would be on me to prove that that law was in fact unconstitutional. Under Bruin, the burden of proof is now on Jared Polis and the state to prove that the law they passed fits within those guidelines of the Second Amendment. So we've been able to use Bruin as a 4-ton wrecking ball to smash gun control as much as possible. Now, unfortunately, we have a lot of activist judges, and to Matt's project, it's so important that we pay attention to our judicial system, because not a lot of people really do. They pay attention to the president, they pay attention to Congress, and most of the time they don't even pay attention to their state and local elected officials. Maybe they pay attention to the governor. Nobody pays attention to the judges. The judges are so incredibly important. It is so important that we are getting good, constitutionally minded, originalist judges onto our courts, in our courts. That way, when things like Bruin take place, we actually have a bench that backs up the Supreme Court and backs up our rights. Doing that is so important. I encourage you to get involved in what he's doing here in the state. And the problem was, too, is that we sued in state court. And, I mean, even when Colorado was a red state, the Democrats controlled the judicial system. I mean, all the way back in the early 2000s when we had a Republican governor, a Republican supermajority in the legislature, we still had the liberals that were controlling our court system. So it's so important that we're able to do that. So when we sued on the magazine ban back in 2013, intermediate scrutiny was used, and our case was thrown out. Well, RMGO had a big donor that said, now that Bruin's taken place, we want you to take another bite out of the apple on the magazine ban. So we did that. We are now currently suing the state over the magazine ban under Bruin. We're in federal court now. We're not in state court anymore. So now we're in a situation where we are currently in discovery. One thing that came down with DC versus Heller was there was the common use doctrine. So pretty much what they said is they could not ban anything that was in common circulation or common use across the United States. So we're currently working with a couple national organizations to conduct a study on how many of these, I refuse to call them high-capacity magazines, because they're not high capacity. I grew up in Florida and lived in Texas for 3 years before I moved out here. A 30-round magazine was considered a small magazine in those places. You don't really hit the high-capacity magazines until you get into your 100-round drum mags. So right now we have officially gotten the numbers of how many of these magazines are in common use across the country. Unfortunately, I cannot share that number because we are in the middle of a court case, and my attorneys have told me it's best not to. But I want you to imagine in your mind how many of these magazines, over 15 rounds, are in common use across the country. I want you to double that and then multiply it by 5. And you'll be getting close to about the number that you're thinking of. I mean, the number baffled me. I didn't even realize there were so many magazines in circulation across the U.S. And a good anecdote to mention, too, is that when we do, I'll get to this a little bit later when we talk about the assault weapons ban, but we talk about common use. For every Ford F-150 you see, that's 3 AR-15s that you see across the country. So me and some of my staffers play a game, and we see an F-150, we go, oh, there goes 3 or 4 AR-15s. So we're probably going to get a hearing on this sometime in the summer. We are optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that under Bruin we'll be able to get this struck down, and this might be a catalyst for getting magazine bans struck down across the country. So keep your eye out on our magazine ban here in the state of Colorado. The second law that we are suing over is the 21 and under ban. So we sued, literally when Jared Polis signed the bill, we called our attorneys and said, okay, time to sue. The day the bill went into effect, we got a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order, which became a preliminary injunction, which is now to last the entire case on the 21 and under ban. So that law was in effect for about 3 hours before judges came and said, no, this is unconstitutional. We're putting a preliminary injunction on this, and we're ceasing enforcement. So that was a huge win for us. The other lawsuits we were involved in is the home manufacture ban. We actually had a preliminary injunction hearing on it last week. We're feeling good about that. The state was so underwhelming when they presented evidence in that case. We have a very good feeling that our injunction will be granted on the home manufacture ban. We're also involved in a lawsuit regarding the 72-hour minimum waiting period.
Now, unfortunately, we drew a horrible judge when we initially launched that suit. He denied us our preliminary injunction. He's been on the bench for 44 years. He was a Jimmy Carter appointee, and he sure as hell acts like one. The guy's like 90 years old. Been there forever. So, probably. More than likely. So we appealed that to the 10th Circuit, and we are hoping to get a solid ruling on the 10th Circuit. Hopefully all goes well there, and we are able to make that happen. One of the bills I actually forgot to talk about earlier that we would love to sue over is there was a bill last year to remove liability protections from gun manufacturers here in the state of Colorado. So how many of you are familiar with that huge settlement that Remington just had to make with the state of New York? So New York passed a law to remove liability protections from these firearm manufacturers, meaning if you own a gun shop, okay, and someone comes and they buy, let's just say they buy an AR, okay, and then they go to another gun shop and they buy an optic, and then let's say they go to Walmart, they buy a flashlight, they go to Walgreens, buy some duct tape that flashlight on the end of the AR, and they go and commit a crime. Well, the family of that victim could sue the gun shop that sold them the firearm, sue the gun shop that sold them the optic, sue Walmart for selling them the flashlight because that flashlight was converted into a firearm accessory, and could even sue Walgreens or the manufacturer of the duct tape because that duct tape that criminal used to duct tape the flashlight onto the end of that firearm was converted into a firearm accessory. Absolutely insane. Unfortunately, in order for us to have standing, we would have to have someone who was actually harmed by that bill. Fortunately, that has not happened. No one has tried to sue any local gun shops here. So thankfully, we have not had, I would love to be able to litigate it, but also that would mean someone's life would probably have to be destroyed in order for that to happen. So thankfully, that has not happened yet. So I want to talk about this year, our legislative session, and the disaster that it has been so far. We have 10 bills that have been filed. We initially heard 17 were going to get filed. I'm not entirely sure if that's still going to be the case since we're coming so close to the end of session. But they could in the last 30 days try to put up these 7 more bills that we're talking about and ram them through. So I'm going to rattle off these bills real quick, and then I want to get to questions. The first bill they tried to do was Senate Bill 3, and that would give the Colorado Bureau of Investigation a new illegal firearms trafficking unit. What that would do would it was allow Colorado Bureau of Investigation to go around to local gun shops, enforce the magazine ban, because a lot of localities have said, listen, we're a Second Amendment sanctuary. We are not going to enforce this magazine ban. Well, the state said we're sick and tired of these pesky, local control, right-wing extremists who really cling to their guns. So we're going to send the state police after them. We're calling it the CBI Gestapo bill because they're going to go around to local gun shops, investigate them, see if they still have these magazines on their shelf, and also their job is to investigate you to make sure you don't have any unserialized firearms lurking around your house. That is a really bad bill. That bill has the support of our great libertarian governor, and that bill has passed the Senate. It is currently sitting in the House right now. The second bill they tried to ram through is Senate Bill 66. That bill would force credit card companies to create a new merchant category code for firearms. So if you look at your credit card statement and you look at all your charges, I could grab my phone and pull up my Capital One app right now, and it saw that I went and spent money at, Earl's Kitchen, and that, it would show a little category that it would come up under, and it would say dining. Those are your merchant category codes. Currently, if you go to buy a firearm and you use a credit card, that will come up as sporting goods, because what is a firearm? It is a sporting good. So it will come up under sporting goods. What they want to do now is they want to create these new category codes specifically for firearms. And they want to give the Attorney General's office full access to get those codes from the credit card companies at any point so they can track your purchases. That's what this is all about, is tracking your purchases, tracking the purchases of gun owners so they can come, they can send CBI to your door and go, I saw you went and bought something at Triple J Armory and they sell 30-round magazines. Well, now we're going to come into your house and make sure you weren't buying one of those evil high-capacity magazine clips, as Diana DeGette calls them. So that is a really bad bill. That bill has also, unfortunately, passed the Senate, and it is now sitting in the House. I hate to tell you, those are the better bills of the session. The third bill is a bill that actually has a hearing going on right now. I just left that hearing, and it is Senate Bill 131, and it's a bill to ban the carry of firearms in quote-unquote sensitive spaces or all public places. This bill, as written right now, would ban carry in churches, college campuses, anywhere with a public gathering, zoos, aquariums, an adjacent sidewalk to a public gathering, parks, pretty much all public places where you would normally carry a firearm to defend yourself. It is a complete and utter defiance to the Bruin decision, because the Bruin decision was all about enshrining the right to carry in public places. This is the Colorado General Assembly spitting in the face of the Supreme Court and saying, no, we will not comply. We are going to make sure that nobody can carry in public places. That hearing is going on right now. I'll give you guys the verdict towards the end because there's some good news that comes with this, and I'll save the good news for after I've depressed all of you. So the next bill they're trying to ram through is a bill to require you to lock your guns up inside your car. So if you are parking your car and you have a firearm in it, you need to unload it, put a trigger lock on it, and put it in either a safe or a hard storage container, and you can't put it in your glove box or the center console. So pretty much I'm calling this the Thief Protection Act, because that's really what it is. You're literally asking criminals, what is the first thing a criminal is going to do now when they're going around and stealing cars? Because we don't have a car theft problem here in Colorado. In Denver? No, never. Never in a million years. They're going to go start looking for these hard black boxes, and if they see one, they're going to say, oh, cool, firearm. And they're not going to just break into the car and steal it. They're just going to steal the whole car. They're going to steal the whole car. I had to hear our district attorney here in Denver explain or attempt to explain that putting a gun inside a box is going to be a great deterrent for criminals who want to steal cars, because they're going to see it and they're going to go, oh, that's a black box. Well, I already broke the window, but that's too hard. That's too hard for me to get open. So I'm just going to go on to the next car. Literally, that's what she said. That's what they said. Absolutely insane. No, we're not going to prosecute the people that are breaking into cars. We're not going to arrest the people that are stealing cars. No, we're just going to make it easier for them to steal your car or steal guns out of your car. Give them an incentive to steal your entire car. That bill was passed out of House Judiciary and has now been passed out of the House, unfortunately. The next bill that they're trying to ram through is a bill, and that bill was House Bill 1348. This next bill is House Bill 1270. This bill would mandate all gun owners to carry liability insurance. What that means is if you have a home or a business and you want to get a renter's insurance or a homeowner's insurance policy, now how it's going to work, and I actually know this because I talked to one of our members about this a couple weeks ago, and he went and talked to his insurance company in preparation for this. They're going to start asking you if you have firearms in the house. They're going to require that you take a picture of every firearm, and they're going to require that you send them serial numbers. Or they'll deny you your insurance policy. So the bill also gives first right of refusal to these insurance companies to deny you insurance strictly based on the fact that you own firearms. Additionally, if you do not have insurance on your home or business and someone breaks in and you use your firearm to neutralize that threat, you're the one who gets in trouble now because you didn't have that insurance. That bill was scheduled for a hearing last Thursday. We had an act of God that came in and delayed them for a couple weeks. That bill is now on the calendar for next week. What I want you guys to do real quick is get a pen and paper out or pull your phones out. And I want you to take down this website. rmgo.org/billwatch. That page is updated almost daily. It has all the information for all the bills, where they're at, which committee they're in, when their next hearing is, and also in the next couple weeks, I'm going to be posting one-pagers with a synopsis of every single bill that you can just easily click on. That way you don't have to read through the whole bill. You can just click on that synopsis and you'll get a good understanding of what the bill does. Watch that like a hawk. Check it daily. We have constant updates. If you're not on the RMGO email list yet, get on the RMGO email list. How many are on the RMGO email list right now? All right, that's not enough. Every single person, by the time we leave, needs to be on the RMGO email list. Because we send out emails daily. We give constant updates. And if you're on the RMGO email list and you check that email, you will constantly be up to date on everything that is going on in the Colorado General Assembly regarding firearms. So the next bill that they're trying to ram through is House Bill 1174. The liability insurance bill is House Bill 1270. This is House Bill 1174. This bill would increase the requirements for obtaining a concealed carry permit here in the state of Colorado. So currently, how many CCW holders do we have here? Beautiful. So currently, those of you who have a permit went ahead and you went to a class, you got a certificate, you took it to your local sheriff's office, and under current law, the sheriff shall issue, that changed in the early 2000s, shall issue you a permit as long as you can legally own and possess a firearm. Well, they're changing it now. Now you're mandated. First, instructor certification must now go through the county sheriff's office. So now only people who will be able to give concealed carry courses are the ones that the government says are able to. Additionally, you must now pass a live fire exam with 70%, and you must pass a written exam of 80% in order to get that certificate that you can take to your sheriff to get your permit. They are turning the right to carry into a privilege where you must shoot like an Olympian, have the knowledge of an attorney, just to be able to legally defend yourself. It is absolutely insane. And that bill, coupled with that sensitive spaces bill I was telling you earlier, will result in a de facto ban on concealed carry. That's what they're shooting for here. They know that if they outright ban concealed carry, that will get torn to shreds in the courts. But if they make it so hard that people are not just they don't want to go through the process of carrying legally, one, it turns a lot of gun owners into criminals, and two, people are just not going to do it. They're saying, why bother? I have to go through this process. It's going to have the New York effect. Nobody carries a gun in New York because it's so hard to obtain a gun in New York. Legally. Emphasis on legally. And also in New York, if you shoot someone in self-defense, you go to jail because they don't have stand your ground there. So that's House Bill 1174. That bill passed the House. It is currently sitting in the Senate right now. I'm not entirely sure what the Senate is going to do. I have to meet with a couple senators tomorrow. Unfortunately, I hate meeting with these senators. They're the worst. But I'm going to meet with them tomorrow to see what the status of this bill is going to be. The next bill they're trying to ram through is House Bill 1310. And this bill would effectively get rid of the school resource officer program here in the state of Colorado. Right now, school districts can opt in and say, we want armed guards in our school system. Multiple school districts do that right now. I live in Loveland. Thompson Valley School District does that. Littleton School District does that. Rocky Ford School District does that. And how many of you have heard of the FASTER program? So pretty much what that is it is a program that trains concealed carry permit holders to become school resource officers and be able to be armed security at any school. This would effectively get rid of it because what it would do is it would force you to undergo 24 hours of training. 16 of those are firearms training, so like 10 hours of live fire, 6 hours of firearm safety, another 8 hours of DEI and sensitivity training. I'm not kidding. And then also on top of that, you would have to become post-certified. So you would have to be able to take the firearms exam that the police have to go through, which I doubt any of our police officers can even pass that exam, quite frankly. I mean, we had a guy unload a magazine because an acorn fell in his car. I'm like, are you kidding me? And they don't trust us to carry firearms? Okay. So that bill has actually been pulled off the calendar. It was scheduled on the day that the act of God took place, but the Democrats have tied themselves up in knots so much over this bill, they just straight up pulled it off the calendar. They did the same with the gun purchase tracking bill in the House, because we are turning the pressure up on them so much that they kind of don't know what to do at this point, because it's an election year and they know they're kind of screwed, quite frankly. So that bill's been pulled off the calendar. I highly doubt that it is dead, but for the moment, it has been taken out of the equation for now. I expect that to change. Last couple bills I want to get to before I get to the big one, which is the assault weapons ban, and honestly, there are so many bills. I've honestly have started to lose track. I've honestly started to lose track of the bills because there's just so many this session. House Bill 1349, which is a ballot initiative to add another 11% tax on guns and ammunition. So if that bill passes through the legislature, it's going to be on your 2024 presidential ballot. If that happens, Rocky Mountain gun owners will make sure we get the proposition number or letter that it's going to be, and we are going to launch an insurmountable campaign for Get Out the Vote to tell people to oppose this measure. Should this pass, your guns will be taxed at 23%. Right now, you're already taxed at 12% because of the ATF for manufacturing. That additional 11%, if you go buy a SCAR, which is about a $5,000 gun, you will have an additional, about give or take, another $500 to $600 tax on that firearm. Honestly, no, you'll have about an extra $1,000 tax on that firearm. You'll be 23%. So yeah, about an extra $1,100 to $1,200 tax on that. That's going to price a lot of people out of buying firearms, especially in this economy. They won't be able to they won't be able to handle the taxes, and they won't be able to buy the guns, which is what they want. They can't ban the guns outright. They're going to try, but they can at least make it unaffordable to be able to purchase them. That's what this is all about. All of these bills can be tied together into one big, giant, I call it the Second Amendment Extinction Package of 2024, because that's really what it's all about. Should all these bills pass, it will be nearly impossible to buy a firearm here in the state of Colorado. We will be worse than Illinois. We will be worse than California. We will be worse than Washington. Let that sink in. So that's House Bill 1349. That bill has a hearing next Monday. I encourage you all to show up or at least testify online. If you're on our email list, you can get an easy access to the ability to go on, sign up for testimony. It's usually pretty easy. Most of the time, they don't limit testimony unless it's on a highly controversial bill, like the assault weapons ban or the sensitive spaces bill that they're hearing right now. House Bill 1353 is probably the second most egregious bill I've ever seen, next to the assault weapons ban. This is a new state permitting scheme for gun shops. So now in order to be able to run a gun shop in the state of Colorado, you now need to get your FFL license, but you also need to get an additional $400 permit from the state of Colorado, which comes with obscene amounts of strings. All your employees must undergo a fingerprint-based FBI background check that you pay for. All your employees must pass a state-administered exam with 70% in order to work at the gun shop. All firearms must be safely stored at all times, meaning they must be locked up in a safe in the back or in a display case with a trigger lock. And the most egregious part of it all, and we're going to tie this back to the CBI Gestapo bill, is that CBI and the Department of Revenue have the authority to do warrantless searches and seizures of your gun shop at any moment, anytime they see fit. What that means, they can comb through all their employee records, comb through all their inventory. And also, they can pull all those 4473 forms that you fill out when you go to buy a gun. They can take those. Now we have a statewide gun registry. Now, CBI can go, get those 4473 forms, go, this guy Brandon worked, let's see what he's bought recently. They can go, and then also what they can do is they can track his credit card purchases to see which shops he's at, show up at the shop, grab his 4473s, see what he's bought, see what he owns. Ooh, interesting. He bought a magazine at a gun shop that sells high-capacity or standard capacity magazines. Then CBI can show up at his house. That's what this is all about. This is a hardcore, right out of the book of Stalin and Lenin and Hitler. This is not conjecture. This is exactly the kind of garbage. They honestly might blush at the idea of this. If they knew that this was possible in the 20th century, man, they would have loved it. This is straight out of the communist Chinese playbook, where they're able to track you, come to your house, know everything about you, and invade every aspect of privacy that you still have. You don't have much of that anymore, but they want to get rid of that too. That is the second most egregious bill that I think I have seen this session. That would force probably 90% of gun shops in the state of Colorado to close. And also, if you're a gun shop and you say, no, you can't come into my store without a warrant, you get shut down. Absolutely insane. Now let's get to the big one. House Bill 1292, the so-called assault weapons ban. Which, by the way, if you had to sit through that testimony for any period of time and you got to hear the utter stupidity that came out of the other side, there was a woman from Moms Demand Action who said that the fully semi-automatic AR-556 can shoot a bullet at 2,000 miles an hour and can cover 6 football fields in a second. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I want one of those. Another Moms Demand Action activist said that the second that the 556 caliber fully semi-automatic bullet makes contact with the human body, it disintegrates it. There is another Moms Demand Action. They're all from Moms Demand Action too. Oh, this was a great one. What did she say? Huh? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. They all have like the Karen haircuts too. They're like really, really old and, probably Moms Demand Action sounds like a dating site for disgruntled women more than a gun safety group. Okay. So, not that I'm bitter, but another really heroic comment I heard yesterday was that the AR-15, the AR-556, because that's what they kept calling it yesterday. They kept calling it the AK-15, the AR-556, or the AR with a fully semi-automatic .223 caliber bullet. Yeah, that's what they think these guns are. Said you can't use it as a home defense weapon because if you shoot it, it'll cause your house to blow up. Yeah, I want one of those too. Another one said that a AR-15 is akin to a shoulder-fire missile launcher. And probably, there's another. Oh, the best one that I heard was someone from Giffords or Brady or Everytown. They're all the same. Say something along the lines of, she said, I grew up with guns, I know guns, and I understand what you can do to convert a regular long gun into an assault weapon. She said the difference between regular long guns and assault weapons is that the assault weapon is a killing machine that can cause organs to literally turn into jello the second it makes contact with a bullet. And that's the difference between a 30-06 bolt-action hunting rifle and an AR-15, allegedly. These people have no idea what they're talking about. These people are incredibly stupid. I had Stephen Woodrow ask a panel yesterday and said, are you aware that the fully semi-automatic AR-15 can shoot 45 to 60 rounds per second or something like that. Like something remarkably stupid. Like, these people don't know what they're talking about, and yet they think they can legislate what we do with our own firearms. It was awful. It was so bad. We also had another high school student come in and said that the type of assault weapons that would be banned under this bill were the same that were used to kill cops and congressmen on January 6th. Yeah, if only. If only. And then said that the safest states in the U.S. are Illinois, Washington, Massachusetts, and California. Yeah. Yeah, these people are idiots. These people are complete morons. With that being said, all stupidity aside, also, Javier Mabry was on coke the entire hearing yesterday. It was very obvious. Like bad. Like real bad. So, this bill would ban pretty much everything. Anything that's semi-automatic, has a detachable magazine, muzzle brake, compensator, threaded barrel is all defined as an assault weapon under this bill. Would be completely banned. You would not. They did amend it to where you could transfer the firearms down to your children. The original bill wasn't worded like that. You go into your local gun shop. What do you see? You don't see Mausers. You don't see your precision bolt action rifles. You rarely even see your Henry lever actions these days. What do you see? You see ARs, AKs, AR platform rifles, AR pistols. And also the Glock that I have in my car right now would be considered an assault weapon because it has a compensator, a threaded barrel, it's semi-automatic, and takes a detachable magazine. This bill will put 99% of gun shops out of business. And then you couple this bill with the state permitting bill, you think okay, that's fine. I can still go buy a revolver because honestly, the only things that would still be legal under this bill would be pea shooters, water pistols, revolvers, bolt action, lever action rifles. That'd be the only thing that would still be legal under this bill. Debatable. Do they have a detachable magazine? It depends. It's ambiguous. It bans most shotguns too. So, and also with the way the bill is written, that pump action shotgun could also be considered a semi-automatic firearm. Just with how awful the bill is written. So, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll get to that in a second. So, this bill is going to make it almost impossible to purchase a firearm here in Colorado. And if you think you can still go to Cabela's to get your pea shooters and your revolvers, I hate to tell you, you're sorely mistaken because the big box stores are just going to stop selling firearms because they don't want to have to comply with this state permitting law. You will not be able to buy firearms here anymore. That's really what it comes down to. And also, because Colorado has this weird extra jurisdictional rule over their citizens, you flash a Colorado ID in Texas or Wyoming, they won't sell you. They won't sell to you. So we're in dire straits right now. That bill passed the House Judiciary Committee yesterday on a party line vote. We had about 600 or 700 people show up. 80% were on our side. They stopped calling proponents of the bill around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And from 3 o'clock until about 10:30 at night was all people opposed to the bill. And they still passed it. The good news is that bill still doesn't have a Senate sponsor. And I want to talk about the sensitive spaces bill and where we're at on that because that actually spells good things. Phil, have we heard from Kevin yet? Okay, good. Get to that in a second. That actually spells a little bit of hope for us. So, here's the deal. We still need to fight this every step of the way. It's going to hit the House floor. It's going to cross over. It's going to go to the Senate. We're going to have to go through the process all over again. But the Senate is a lot more skittish about these kinds of bills. And also with the pressure that we have put on these people, it's a very good chance that the Senate's going to say we want nothing to do with this, which is why there's no Senate sponsor on the bill. That, as long as there's no Senate sponsor on the bill, that is a very good sign for us on the assault weapons ban. We will sue. The second the ink is dry, we will sue on this bill. And what we're going to do is we currently, another lawsuit it's been a long couple days and my brain isn't working the best. We currently are involved in a lawsuit against the Boulder County, the city of Superior, and the city of Louisville over their assault weapons ban after the King Soopers shooting. They banned all semi-automatic weapons. They banned any magazines with a capacity over 10 rounds. So we sued over that and we got a preliminary injunction. Our plan is to sue over the assault weapons ban, try to tie our Superior case and the assault weapons ban together so we can try to get that injunction extended to the state. That is going to be our plan for if we do end up having to take this to court. Ideally, we don't have to. Off the microphone. There we go. Ideally, that does not have to happen. So where do we go from here? Well, we need to be prepared. Keep an eye on your email. Keep an eye on everything that's going on. And the second, there's a good chance they kill this on the House floor. Not a high chance, but there is a chance. I think there are going to be a lot of Democrats in competitive districts that are going to be really, really squeamish about having to go on the record on something like this, especially when they only won their elections by a couple hundred votes in 2022. That's a good sign for us. That's a great sign for us. Should this cross over to the Senate, though, we're going to need all hands on deck to go out and really, really fight hard against this bill and ideally put so much pressure on the senators that they kill it in committee and it never sees the Senate floor. That is our most ideal situation. So I want to get to sensitive spaces, then I'll take about 10 minutes of questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So sensitive spaces, that bill was initially scheduled for a hearing last week. Because of the act of God, it was moved over to today. I get a call from Senator Julie Gonzalez last night, which if any of you know anything about her, she's probably the most unfriendly senator to gun rights in the state Senate. She represents a safe district in Denver. It is so blue that no Republican even runs for that district. Get a call from her last night. She goes, hey, we really don't want to touch this sensitive spaces bill with a 10-foot pole. She's like, I have issues with it. It's horribly written, and we really just want nothing to do with this. So I'm like, okay. So to give you some context, the Senate Judiciary Committee is made up of 2 Republicans, 3 Democrats, okay? 2 of the Democrats are Julie Gonzalez and Daphne Michelson-Janae, who have never voted right on the gun issue, I think, ever. Even when they were in the House, they were god-awful. The 3rd Democrat on that committee is a guy named Senator Dylan Roberts from the Western Slope. Now, he's in a slightly competitive district, and he represents a extremely large rural area. He represents Craig. He represents from Gilpin County, so Nederland and Breckenridge, all the way out to the state line. So he's got a couple blue areas in his district like Steamboat, Breckenridge, Vale, but the rest of his district is all a red sea. He has places like Kremling, he has places like Craig, he has places like Rifle. All those areas are hardcore conservative areas. So he has actually voted with us on some of these gun issues. He voted against raising the age he voted against the 21 and under ban. He voted against the manufacturer liability bill. And he kind of sticks his finger up in the air and sees where the wind is blowing. He also was the only Democrat to vote against the gun purchase tracking bill on the Senate floor. We've sent probably 1,000 calls into his office over the last month. And I've made it a habit. Phil has my phone in case something goes haywire with the hearing currently. But I made it a habit, and I'm going to continue this tradition of handing out his personal cell phone number everywhere I go and telling you guys to give him a call. This guy has not been able to breathe for the last month. We've put so much pressure on him. So I get this call from Julie Gonzalez last night. She says, we want nothing to do with this. I said, really? It sounds to me like you just don't have the votes for it, and Dylan Roberts is saying he's not going to vote for it. And she kind of hemmed and hawed and went back and forth, and he doesn't control me and I don't control him. And I was like, okay, I know what you're talking about here. She's like, what we're going to do is we're just going to lay this bill over and let it die on the calendar. So we're going to see if she stays true to her word. We're going to find that out, honestly, before this meeting is over. If that hearing wraps up, I might, from the back of the room while you guys are hanging around and drinking, yell the bill's been postponed. That does not mean the bill is dead. What it means is it's on the calendar because the Democrats are so tied up in knots over it right now that they're just going to let it sit there and they're going to figure out what the hell they're going to do about it. Because right now they know if they pass this bill, it gets eviscerated in the courts. This bill was struck down in the state of California. There's a preliminary injunction on it currently from the Ninth Circuit. So they're getting all tied up in knots over this, and they're really starting to feel the pressure. The Senate is. The Senate has always been the more we don't want to rock the boat kind of chamber. They don't really take up a lot of the controversial stuff like the House does. Even the mainstream media here in Colorado is saying it's very unlikely that this bill makes it through the Senate, or the assault weapons ban. So what we're seeing from the Senate is we're seeing a backpedal. After they pass the gun purchase tracking and the CBI bill, we're seeing them pretty much go on a complete halt on the gun bills. They have not scheduled any of the bills that the House has sent over to them. They're just letting them sit on the calendar. And talking with our good buddy Dylan Roberts earlier today, he told me straight out, it is very unlikely they even hold a vote on this bill, on the sensitive spaces bill. They're just going to let the clock run out. They're going to let it die on the calendar. So obviously, never trust a politician when they tell you something, ever, especially if it's a private promise. But I can say there's hope here. This is a good sign. The fact, if the Democrats knew that they could get away with this, you know they would ram this thing through. But they're not sure they can get away with it, which is why they're taking like 10 steps back on these bills. And during the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing today, there was some other unrelated bill, and Dylan Roberts was just taking every opportunity he possibly could to call the House Judiciary Committee incompetent. So you can tell there's a huge, huge conflict between the House and Senate right now. The House wants to ram all this stuff through. The Senate's saying, wait a second, we're going to get taken to the woodshed at the ballot box if this happens. So that's very good. We're keeping the pressure on, and hopefully we will see the Senate continue their timidness on these gun bills, and maybe we might be able to kill a couple of these this session. So that's all I got for now. I'll take a couple questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Yes? Hang on, he's bringing you a mic real quick.
Thank you. Do you know the status of sensitive spaces laws here in Denver?
So, I know they banned open carry in Denver. Other than that, they're kind of ambiguous. So, I mean, you can't carry in the Capitol. You can't carry in government buildings. A lot of that's already covered under federal law. The rest of it's a little ambiguous. I don't live in Denver. I'm not super familiar with their firearms ordinances. But I do know that they do have an assault weapons ban. And also you cannot open carry in the city of Denver.
But I heard that they were passing laws about concealed carry in parks and stuff.
Yeah, so they're trying to brand. That's the sensitive spaces bill I was talking about a second ago.
But I thought that was, Denver also has its own law like that. It was my understanding.
I think they might be working toward it, but I have not heard of anything like that passed. I got in here 6 months ago. That may have happened before I showed up here. But as of right now, I'm unfamiliar. Yes. Yeah, you had a question? Yeah.
Ian, thank you very much. That was
Of course.
a very succinct review of all these laws. So I have a question. The question is, so who are these representatives or senators actually writing these laws, or who is bringing these to the table? How is that happening?
So what we're seeing here, the extinction level event for the Second Amendment, is not unique to Colorado this year. Pennsylvania has 36 gun control bills that have been filed this session. Virginia passed an assault weapons ban. Pennsylvania is trying to pass an assault weapons ban. Michigan is trying to ban 5.56. What we are seeing is Bloomberg has dumped millions of dollars into Democrat candidates. All these bills are not being written by these senators and legislators. These bills are being written by attorneys from Everytown, Moms Demand Action, Brady, and Giffords. That's why if you pull up the safe storage law here in Colorado, and then you go and pull up the safe storage law in Michigan, they're identical. These people are being handed these bills by these left-wing anti-gun advocacy groups. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Matt.
Hold on. Hey, you said you weren't that familiar with Denver firearms ordinances. So if you want to punt, that's fine. I'm curious if you can explain a bit how the city of Denver can get away with banning open carry when it's protected in the rest of Colorado. What is the particular little legal judo or whatever they did there?
So in 2019, they repealed state preemption. So from 1876 until 2019, it was written into state law that state firearm law superseded all other governmental or political subdivisions laws on firearms. One of the first things they did when the Dems took the trifecta in 2019 was pass red flag gun confiscation and repeal state preemption. What that meant then is that localities and cities could pass their own ordinances for gun control. And right after that was when Denver passed their ordinance to ban open carry.
Is that a gun control specific preemption, or is that just a blanket?
It is gun control specific.
It's not a blanket preemption that cities now have more local power vis-a-vis state power. It's
specifically for gun control. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
It actually goes back before that. I think it was a 2008 case. Denver, being home rule, had some carve out from state exemption. It was a case that actually went up to the Colorado Supreme Court, and it was upheld on a 3-3 because Justice Ide had to recuse herself because she had struck it down at the district court level when she was a district court judge. So that the Denver open carry ban goes back way before 2019.
Okay.
The question I have is when we get people to show up to these committee hearings, and it's a useful and valuable exercise to do, both for the political pressure and I think to set up the conditions for successful lawsuits down the road. And one of the things I'm wondering is, do you help provide ammunition, so to speak, for people who show up at these hearings, not giving them a script like the left does, but giving them maybe some information, some talking points to get on the record? Because that's really important when you're setting it up for cases that go to the courts. And one of the very important things, I think, with this kind of stuff, when they're passing blatantly unconstitutional legislation, is to make them get on record that they're aware of that and that they know what they're doing is unconstitutional. Not only does it put them on the hot seat for doing that, but I think, and this is the problem with this stuff, they keep coming back again and again and again because they're never held accountable for what they do. And I think there's a possibility here to, especially now that it is very clearly unconstitutional what they're trying to push, to get at them with federal law, Section 1983, Section 1842, and hold them individually and personally accountable and keep them from ever holding office again. That is something you can do with the law, but you have to get them on record as knowing that what they're doing is unconstitutional before they do it. So I would suggest, if you can put this out to folks, hey, make them admit that they know that what they're doing is unconstitutional. Get them on record. That helps set up the court cases, and it may open some avenues to hold these people individually responsible. Not only will it kick them out, but it'll send a very good message going forward, like they say, pour encourager les autres, to let them know that, hey, this is dangerous to my career as a legislator.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought up 1983 because I've been 10 rounds with multiple attorneys about can you get around 1983 or does speech and debate immunity block that? Which I would love to have a conversation with you afterwards about that. Let's talk, because we could probably talk about that for hours. So what he's referring to is pretty much, for lack of a better word, qualified immunity for legislators. So in the Constitution, they do have speech and debate immunity. What they say, during well, yeah, we'll talk about it. What they say during floor debates or anything of that sort is protected, and most of the time, at least it's been upheld like this since 1983, is that they are completely immune for what they say during their speech in debate, and that's even extended to legislative staff. That's extended to communications that they have, not even in their official legislator capacity. Do I think it's right? Absolutely not. The problem is that it's very, very hard. No one's ever been really able to get around it. Now, executive officials is a completely different story. Executive officials, so we're talking about your constitutional offices, governor, secretary of state, all of that, do not have speech and debate immunity. So it is possible. I actually have a friend who's an attorney working on this in Kentucky right now, because the governor there, they were able to do a Kentucky Open Records Act and got communications between the governor of Kentucky and his staff, where he had, during COVID, he specifically said in writing that he knew he was violating the First Amendment rights of Kentuckians by banning them from going to church during COVID. They are now have a cert petition to take that up to the Supreme Court so they can hold them individually liable. So there is a path to hold Jared Polis personally and individually liable for him signing laws that are blatantly unconstitutional. And what you're seeing now is you're now seeing them try to pass laws to limit the Colorado Open Records Act because they want to keep their communications out of the public light. Because if they do that, I mean, if we can get communication between Jared Polis's office and, let's say, Everytown or Giffords, and we have them saying, yes, we fully know this violates the Supreme Court's decision in Bruin. We fully know that this is unconstitutional. We're going to do this anyway. We can nail Jared Polis. And I mean, even if we have Phil Weiser, if we have, because all this stuff is coming from, a lot of this gun control garbage is coming from Phil Weiser, the Attorney General's office. And Jared Polis kind of just sits back and puts his finger up in the air and goes, oh, let's see where the wind's blowing. But most of this anti-gun garbage is coming straight from Phil Weiser's office. So if we're able to get, communication between Weiser's staff or Weiser himself and some of these anti-gun advocacy groups where they're literally saying in writing, yes, we know this violates the Constitution, we can nail them and hold them personally liable. And I'm really curious to see how my friend, we'll talk about this at the end, we'll talk about that Kentucky case, how that works if it gets to the Supreme Court and they're able to do this with the governor of Kentucky. Does that sort of answer your question? Okay.
The question is more to the point of, on all these committee hearings and testimony, encourage people to get that out there.
Absolutely.
Get the legislators to admit their knowledge on the record that what they're doing is unconstitutional.
Oh, I actually have a good story that I was going to end with, so we'll get around to that. But yes, we do, our people that are showing up to testify, if they ask for it, unfortunately, we can't necessarily go on and see a Google Doc of everyone who signed up. But I try to talk to as many people as possible, put it in our emails what our talking points need to be, and literally just email out in testimony emails, email out the talking points that we're going to be using to shoot down these bills in committee. I think I'll take 3 more questions and we'll wrap it up.
Hi, Ian. Thank you.
Yes.
With the current state of everything, pushing back against these people in office that are blatantly violating us, where are you guys looking at for support? Where people need to run? What is the outlook in that respect? How do we do better on that?
So we are going to be dumping a couple $100,000 into the election this year. I run our super PAC. I've selected about 11 districts in the House where Democrats are extremely vulnerable this year. What we're going to be doing is we've sent our surveys out. Our survey program's in full swing. Those went out a couple weeks ago. We're currently getting surveys slowly trickling in. If they're 100% on the gun issue, even if they're not, even if we don't love them enough to endorse them, if they're 100% on the gun issue, at the very least, we will run all kinds of negative against the Democrat in that district. And our goal is we have to kick these people out of office. So we're just going to keep going 100 rounds with these assholes until they finally get to the point where they can pass it. It's all about incrementalism. We do this whenever we try to pass, when NAGR tries to pass constitutional carry in a lot of states. We'll do it the first year. We might get a committee vote. It dies in committee. The next year, we get it out of committee. We get it through a chamber. Maybe it dies in the other chamber. The next year, it gets through both chambers but dies in conference committee. And then maybe on the fourth attempt, it gets through conference committee, it gets to the governor's desk, and it gets signed into law. So this is what we're doing. We're not going to be able to stop this forever. We have to kick some of these people out of office, and we have to show that there's a price to be paid for violating our rights. In 2013, when they passed the magazine ban, that's when Dudley Brown was still running Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. He went ahead and launched 3 recalls against senators across the state after they passed that magazine ban. They actually got the Senate president recalled. They got one of the Senate president lackeys recalled, and then Evie Hudak, who somehow still manages to try to be relevant. She showed up yesterday to testify in favor of the assault weapons ban. Was so scared of the recall that she just up and resigned. And then the next year, Republicans had a very good year. They went ahead, they picked up seats in the House, they took over the Senate, and we got Cory Gardner elected for all the good that did. And they came within maybe 2 or 3 points of kicking John Hickenlooper out of office. For a couple election cycles out after that, the Dems wouldn't touch gun control. They wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It was considered in Democrat circles to be electoral kryptonite because of what happened to them in 2013 and 2014. Well, it's been a decade now. And since then, all of us, across the board, have become a little apathetic. And they think they can get away with this garbage now. And that's why they're trying it, because they think they can get away with it. The only way we stop them is we scar them so bad. I'm talking they lose like 6 or 7 seats in the House. Unfortunately, with the way the maps are drawn and with the way the Senate elections are, the Dems have a lot more of their safe seats up this year. Republicans have more Senate seats to defend this year. But I mean, if we're able to pick up 6 or 7 seats in the House this year, come 2026, we're able to, Republicans take back the Senate, and I understand none of us love Republicans. I don't love Republicans, but there has to be removal from office from these people, even if it means, you're electing a Republican who's good on guns, he'll vote the right way, but he's not a champion on all of our issues. Just the very fact that Democrat lost their seat is going to be enough for the Dems to say, maybe we should think twice about this before we try screwing with people's rights. So yes, we are going to be very involved in the election. We're currently fielding endorsements right now. We're going to release our first endorsements here in the next couple weeks. And we have to make these people pay. Because if they go ahead and they ram this stuff through and they all get reelected, no problem, what the hell do you think they're going to do to us in January of 2025? If they can get through a huge presidential election unscathed, they're going to rail us for the next couple legislative sessions. All right, 2 more questions. Yes? Oh, yes.
Okay, quick comment and then a question.
Yes.
I don't know, it was just a little weird that when people were talking yesterday, I know everyone's trying to be cordial, but like thanking everyone for their time and kind of like begging. Yeah, I was like, man, y'all sound like you're begging. They're just going to ram right through it. Just my personal opinion.
Stupid Republicans.
Yeah, but question for you. For those Democrats who are in safe places, in your opinion, what is the best way to make them feel political pain or political pressure, as the PC world would like to call it?
That is difficult. Democrats, the only way, most of the time your Democrats in safe districts are going to be members of leadership. So the way to make them feel political pain is to make them lose their power. That's the only way you can make these Dems in safe districts feel political pain, is if they lose power. Because with them, it's all about power. You're never going to beat them in their own district. I mean, you could try to run another Democrat against them in a primary, but that's kind of a waste of money, especially with how the Democrat voting base has become so radical in the last few years. I mean, maybe 20 years ago you could get away with that. But the only way to do it is they have to see and they have to watch their friends and colleagues get lobbed off one by one. That's more of a spectator sport. They see there, they go, oh, wow, this is really bad. Yeah, we probably shouldn't do this again. The way we like the analogy I like to give is if you're a rancher and you have a coyote problem, when the coyotes come on your land, you shoot them, you skin them, and you hang them up on the fence post. And that shows the other coyotes that might want to come around and harass your cattle, like, oh, shit, I see some of my friends that were skinned and placed up on this fence. I probably shouldn't go here. That's the way that we go ahead and make the people in safe districts feel political pain. Like a great example, Julie Gonzalez, she's in the safest district in the Senate. I mean, she is Northwest Denver. She literally has the state capitol in her Senate district, okay? She's in the bluest Senate district in the state. But yet, she felt the pressure because her buddy, Dylan Roberts, was getting blown up for a month straight. And she's seeing the writing on the wall and saying, oh, you know, some of my buddies from swing districts might be in trouble if we go ahead and ram this through. So she's a member of leadership. She's the Senate Majority Whip. She is saying, okay, we probably need to kill this so we can get these crazy gun nuts off our back. Does that answer your question? Okay, one more. Yes.
All right. I had a few, but they're quick. I don't know if we have.
Rapid fire.
So serialization at gun stores like FFLs, if they take possession of a homemade firearm, are required to, if they have it for more than 24 hours, required to serialize that.
Or destroy it.
Sure. Is that I hate even doing loophole, but is that a loophole for the stupid ghost gun ban currently?
No, because that's why CBI is going to be going around.
Okay.
To make sure that these gun shops don't have unserialized firearms.
Second one, since we're seeing a bunch of Glock switches on Twitter and places.
Yes.
Could that get to a point where it's common use for brewing?
So that's a very interesting question. So there have been states, that's a gray area at the moment. There have been some states like the state of Indiana full-on ban Glock switches. Glock switches, to my knowledge, are not an NFA item, at least at the moment.
They are.
Oh, they are?
Oh,
No,
God,
they are. Yeah, okay. Long day.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they are an NFA item, so I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question. We're going to have to see how this plays out over the next couple years or cycles.
Mag Gestapo, like if they do this, is there any way, I mean, some old mags used to have like a very obvious date stamped into the plastic if you bought them from
if you were grandfathered
manufacturer.
Yeah.
Is there a way for them to tell, for instance, like on the newer mags or even printed mags, like that, yeah, they're new. These are illegal versus they're old and they're grandfathered.
They don't give a shit. Does that answer your question?
I mean, I know they'll do whatever they want.
They'll do whatever they want. They don't care about whether it's grandfathered or not. And the way the CBI bill is written is it just says they have to go after high-capacity magazines. Doesn't matter if they're grandfathered or not. And the way the bill sponsors have been saying it, people like Tom Sullivan, they don't care. They literally just said, we want to get all the magazines over 15 rounds taken away. So politicians don't like to follow the law, in case you haven't figured that one out yet. All right, I will take one more. I saw you had your hand up for a while. I'll take you, and then anyone else who has questions, please come see me afterwards.
Okay, mine's a little bit different of approach.
Sure.
I'm hearing a lot of like, let's take them out and fuck them up. I'm wondering about like, what percentage of the population do you think actually believes in those statements that you made, like the Moms Against whatever that organization was, like those outrageous
Moms
claims?
Demanding Action?
Yeah. What percentage of the population do you think actually believes that, those things? And how can we educate them and even be able to teach about how guns work? I mean, I think that there has to be some way that, like, the voters, if they're more educated, they're not going to put up with this either.
So, Moms Demand Action is a group with a lot of money and well-organized activists. That's all they are. They have this facade of they're this insurmountable, powerful majority of people who want to take your guns away. That, a lot of it is just a facade. It's a projection. So Vladimir Lenin said the well-organized minority will beat the unorganized majority every time. Moms Demand Action is just simply the well-organized minority. They're the well-organized minority. The general populace doesn't really think about issues like this. Your average voter, they care about taxes, They care about whether they can put food on the table. A good amount of people actually do care about their gun rights. A lot of people care about their gun rights. Most everyday people are not running around saying, let's take everyone's guns away. And also, if you see polling or statistics that tell you otherwise, it's usually garbage. It's so easy to fake polling. I mean, I could literally go in here and say, I talked to the city of Denver, and 100% said that they want to legalize automatic weapons. 100% of the Ian Escalante polling company took a poll of Denver residents, and 100% of them said that they support fully automatic weapons. That's what most of these polls and studies and statistics are, the ones that they cite. I mean, they make this garbage up all the time. They tried to say yesterday that 80% of Coloradans support an assault weapons ban. I don't believe that for a second. Especially when people show up to testify, you have 600 people and 500 of them are opposed to the bill. And we're organized, but we're not as militant and hive-minded as Moms Demand Action is. They literally know every single person that's going to show up. They organize they assign and call upon every single person. They just recycle the same people every hearing too. We kind of just put out a general call to our members, and people show up, and then our members share it with their friends, and their friends share it with their friends. So that's the first part of the equation. The second part of the equation is education theory of politics. I might piss some people off here. While attractive and very nice and kumbaya sounding, is largely ineffective. You can educate your friends, you can educate yourself, but there's a lot of people, unfortunately a lot of people on our side, that think if only we could just get this big, fat, giant megaphone and scream the principles of individual liberty and Austrian economics to the world, everyone would just wake up and all of a sudden the whole world would be libertarian. That is a fallacy. That's a very dangerous fallacy to buy into as well, because it's going to cause you to spin your wheels and it's going to cause you to be largely ineffective. While good intentioned, largely ineffective. Moms Demand Action doesn't go running around educating people and saying, that's why Moms Demand Action does not educate people. If they did, they wouldn't have idiots talking about the AR-556 that's like a shoulder file missile launcher. They go around, they find their people, they recruit their people that are aligned with them, they organize them, and they mobilize them. And that's what we need to do. We need to go out, we need to find our like-minded people. And the way we found our like-minded people is we simply launched a petition that said, stop the 2024 assault weapons ban. We have 200,000 signatures on that petition now, and it's been up for a month. That's how we find our like-minded people. Go out. You'll have to spend some money on it. You'll have to exert some resources. We put an ad up on Twitter, and we boosted it. We spent maybe $1,000 boosting the ad. We got 200,000 signatures. That is the way you identify, you organize, and you mobilize. That's how you are effective, and that's how you can make real policy change. The problem is the Democrats and the left and our enemies have been so much better at organizing for the last 60 years. I mean, go all the way back to the 60s. Go to Saul Alinsky. Go to Rules for Radicals. They have been organizing like this for so long because they figured out that the way to create tangible political change is to get a well-organized minority that's extremely loud, that's extremely obnoxious, and that's able to influence policy change. Because realistically speaking, only about 3% or so of the general populace actually influence elections, actually influence true policy change. Does that answer your question? Okay. As much as I'd love to sit here all night and take questions, I know you guys have places to be. I want to thank Liberty on the Rocks for having me tonight. If you have any other questions, please come find me. My last thing that I want to end with is we need backup. We need backup. We are going to sue over many of these bills they're trying to ram through this session. These lawsuits range from about $650,000 to $1 million apiece. We need your help. We need a war chest that is big enough to combat Moms Demand Action. Bloomberg gives Moms Demand Action tens of millions of dollars a year. Tens of millions of dollars a year. Our average donation is $90. And we're working. We're fighting like hell. And we're using that money very effectively. Every penny that you give to Rocky Mountain gun owners goes to the fight. But the thing is I really do think we have the high ground here. We have the Bruin decision. We're in the best position to kill this garbage in the courts that we have ever been. Ever. This is even better than Heller. Number 2, the Democrats are in for a bad election cycle this year nationwide. Joe Biden won the state of Colorado by 13 points in 2020. The last 3 polls that have come out showed Biden leading by 6 points, 5 points, and most recently 4 points. Okay? That would be the closest margin of an election here since George W. Bush won the state in, was it 2004? Yeah, 2004 was the last time a Republican won the state. So we have the high ground right now. But like the Patriots at Bunker Hill, they had the high ground. They were forcing the British back. But what happened? They ran out of ammo. The thing is, the fight for the soul and the future of our state is happening right now. And if we run out of ammo, I'm not sure we can get in a position to be on the high ground again. The high ground is hard to come by. And when you have the high ground, you must capitalize. Because the Dems do it to us. Our enemies, every time that I have the high ground, they put the screws to us. They did it in California. They did it in Illinois. They did it in New York. They've been trying to do it here, but now people are waking up and resisting. So please, give what you are able to Rocky Mountain gun owners. At the very least, if you're not an RMGO member, go to rmgo.org and join. It's $35 a year to be an RMGO member. Secondly, give what you are able. We take cash, card, check. If you want to know how to do that, come see me afterwards. But we cannot win this fight unless we have people like you who are able to help us with ammunition monetarily, but also help us with ammunition when it comes to manpower. Show up at the Capitol. Knock on doors. Call your legislators. Help us turn the pressure up on these individuals. Run for office. Run for city council. Do what Alicia's doing. Run for county commission. Forget about the president. These are your most important elections. Your county commission elections, your state representative elections, because your county commissioners can actually push back on this garbage, and your state legislators are the ones that can repeal this garbage. I'm glad you asked. I was just about to get to that. We have 20,000 flyers that say stop the assault weapons ban. If you want some, come find me afterwards and we'll either deliver them or we'll overnight them to you. So thank you all so much. Help us in the fight. Give what you can. I'm going to turn it back over. If you have any questions, please come see me. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming out. We will be doing a 3D gun talk introduction in July if you guys are interested in that. And then we will be back in 2 weeks. Matthias von Gutenberg will be talking about the philosophy of left libertarianism. So thanks everyone for coming out. Have a good night. Drive safe and keep fighting the state.